I mean, anything that they come up with, you know, what if they say, well, you can't set up donor advised funds? Okay, it can go straight to the charity, I guess, or it could be a foundation. I mean, you can't come up with a scenario of tax law change that screws this. I mean, because it's all testamentary. They say, well, you can't make your beneficiaries be a charity. That's illegal now. Oh, okay. Put it back to the kids.
Sure.
And we'll just not do this. Okay, I mean, okay, it was a nice idea that the government will let us do. I don't think any of those scenarios happen. But if they do, we
having this in place is not going to impact it negatively in any way. I have to make adjustments on the beneficiaries in order to compensate for it.
Yeah, it's all adaptable. You don't lose any control. You control the beneficiary changes during your lifetime. Right? Are there any other objections you could think of that the client might ask?
One objection would be, is this legit? Like, what is a donor advised fund? That sounds creepy to me.
Okay, I've gotten versions of that question. All right, why isn't everybody doing this? Or, you know, why have we never talked about this before? You know, this sounds too good to be true. I mean, you'll get, they're all versions of the same question, which is, tell me more. And that's basically what they're saying is, I like it, but tell me this again, right? So is this, your base question was, is this legit, right? Yeah, everything we're doing, because here's the strategies. Taxable dollars, rather than give them to people who have to pay taxes, we're going to direct those taxable dollars to people that don't have to pay taxes. That's fair enough. And then all we're doing here is to say, we weren't trying to short our natural heirs. We're going to use some of their money that they were going to get to put it into an insurance policy to replace it. We're going to have a wealth replacement strategy. We've paired up those two simple strategies in this whole concept.
Have you ever had anyone ask you, well, that sounds good, but maybe I should have my CPA look this over?
You could. I think the CPA would be thrilled. In fact, I'd love to meet with the CPA and share this idea, because there may be other clients that he has or she has that could benefit from this. So I think it's a fantastic idea. Why don't we set that up? I'd be running ahead on that one. Yeah. Right?
That's the key word.
Let's call them now. Yeah, right.
That's the key word. Why don't we as employers?
Oh,
absolutely.
You want to be involved in
yes,
that. Do not turn your client loose.
Right, and
let your client explain this, because you've spent 2 days hearing about it. And my guess is you're not 100% comfortable explaining it. Right, I mean, right. So you're right. So you certainly don't want a client who's heard about it for 30 minutes explain it to the tax professional. Do not let that happen.
If you have a large case, that might even be something that you offer.
Yeah. Now here's a version of that objection that you get. So I'm going to need to talk to my CPA. If it's a question, no, you don't really. I mean, this doesn't affect your current taxes or anything that your CPA would be doing, other than a deduction that you'll, just like if you gave it to Goodwill or Boy Scouts or Red Cross, it'll just be one of your deductions. There's really nothing else
What's
that
the
you've done.
deduction?
The donor advice.
Okay.
To set it up. Okay. Yeah, to set it.
And Sean, your CPA / attorney partner that you work with your clients is a center of influence. Isn't this a great opportunity to get with them on this anyway?
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
I
think if you really go with this, I mean, you could do a seminar for CPA clients. You could do a seminar for your attorney, attorney's clients. You could do a seminar at your church or the other charity to talk to the key donors. I mean, so there's big opportunities to take this concept and push it out and get additional, which is what we talked about yesterday for some people. Now, the other question you'll get is, so, yeah, but, we just had our wills updated 2 years ago. I don't want to go through that again. What's your response to that?
Well, what all we're going to do is change the IRA beneficiaries. It has nothing to do with your will whatsoever.
Exactly. Has nothing to do with the will, right? But you will get that question. So we're going to have to update our wills?
No.
No.
they earmarked a lump sum to the charity in the will, wouldn't you have to change that?
Yeah, now if they've done that, you could leave it, because there's nothing wrong with doing that. In fact, if they had $10,000 going to the charity in the will, I'd go, it's not worth paying an attorney $200 to fix that, unless you just want to, but I wouldn't. Just leave it in there, it's not hurting anything. It's not terribly efficient, but it's not hurting anything.
When we review it a couple years down the road, if it's still something that bothers you, we can deal with it then.
Next time you think you need to change it, we'll just address that. But it's not worth changing the will to amend that one deal.
We've just done trusts on our accounts, and so we don't have to pay any taxes to the beneficiaries. Don't have to pay any taxes.
Okay, tell me more about that. Now, let me stop you there. This is a common thing, right? People who set up living trusts think that it eliminates the taxes, right? I mean,
Right.
90% of the people that set up living trusts think it saved them money on taxes,
I had
right?
Right.
It doesn't.
This avoids probate.
Right. It avoids probate, makes it private, right? And there's some benefits to that. It makes it simple, private, avoids probate, but it doesn't save you a dime on taxes, right? So you go, great. What you've done with your trust does not conflict with any of this. It doesn't create any conflicts or confusion with your trust. So you won't have to change anything there. I would not get into the discussion about their misunderstanding about trust at that point. I'd make a note and say, after we get this done, I'm going to circle back around and re-educate on how to understand the trust. Because then you're rabbit trail, right?
Well, they couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe that their trust paid the taxes. They were totally blown away that they're not going to have to pay any taxes.
Yeah, they got to have a discussion with them about that. That's why they were surprised.
Okay, and I know that not every single meeting is gonna flow like this, but one of the things that I had an issue with, I kept going back to, well, there's two types of funding, let me back up a couple of that. So, I get where you throw in, there's two types of peoples after the hierarchy discussion.
Yeah.
The next thing is there's basically two types of money that transfers at your death.
Right.
The ones that are taxed and the ones that are not taxed. At what point would you slide that in?
Here's where I talk about the two types of people. Legacy, remember?
Can you go through that section again right there? Do you mind rolling?
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So let's talk about the hierarchy of money. Hierarchy of money is very similar in concept to the hierarchy of needs developed by Maslow, which basically says as individuals we have some basic needs that go all, food, shelter, clothing, go all the way up to self-actualization. It's really no different when you start talking about retirement planning. There are expenses that you want to have met, food, shelter, clothing, down to the base level. And then above that, you have discretionary expenses, entertainment, dining, recreation, travel, hobbies, those types of things. Those two areas make up what most people think of as their retirement experience. And we want to make sure that those are adequately funded, that when you've chosen work to be optional, that you have enough assets and income to live out that kind of lifestyle that you've chosen for as long as you may need it without the fear of running out of money, and that you're absolutely certain of that. Okay? Above that line, the discussion gets a little bit more interesting. And that is, once we're comfortable with that, let's look at these additional things that you've always wanted to do and you haven't yet done. Or to put it a different way, the things that you would regret not having done. And see if they can be funded and that if it still works. Because my guess is that you might not take money and pay for a grandkid's college if you were concerned that you might not have money. And a lot of times I'll ask them the question, what would keep you from buying one of your grandkids a brand new car? What would keep you from, other than whether you agree or disagree, what financially would keep you from doing it?
Whether I'm going to need the money.
I might need the money, right? So if we knew that you weren't going to, that might free you up to do some of those things that you might want to do. At the top level, we look at the legacy dollars. These are the dollars that go through your estate that you're not going to end up spending. And if you think about it, there are two types of people financially. There are those that are going to outlive their money, and nobody wants to be in that camp. And there are those that their money is going to outlive them. And just by the nature of work that I do, that's who I end up talking with. And I think it's one of my obligations that if we know that you're going to have money that passes through your estate, it's going to outlive you, that we need to transfer your values and principles to the organization and people that you care about in the most tax efficient way. Does that make sense? Okay. So I've talked about legacy dollars, and I've ended it with a kind of a closing question. I've just explained the concept, right? This is the whole confident retirement tool concept, just right there, what I just illustrated. Okay, so then I get to move us into the discussion. I can say, are you doing any sort of charitable contributions on a regular basis right now? Stanley, are you doing any?
Yes.
What type? Tell me about that. That's my opening
I'm
question.
giving to my church around $1 grand a year.
What church is that?
United Methodist.
United Methodist. Okay. What amounts are you doing normally?
Typically, between 8 to 10,000.
8 to 10,000. Okay. Have you made any provisions to continue that beyond your life expectancy?
No.
Okay. Can I show you a way that you might be able to do that if you're interested? Are you interested in looking at that?
Sure.
Okay. Most people are. Most people would be polite enough to say sure. If they say no, fine. You say, fair enough. Have you heard about the concept of social capital? Right? You're rolling in here either way. Right? They say yes or no, but it's their discussion. And the discussion is going to be, it's going to be a little different, but it's the same point. Okay? So are you doing any charitable contributions on a regular basis? Oh, tell me about that. United Methodist, how much? Have you made any provisions to continue that beyond your life expectancy? There's two answers. Yes, I have. Tell me about that. And we've got answers wrong. Yes, they've done it their will. Great, because then you can show them a better way. If they've done it through some sort of other means, interesting. Let's talk about that. That means they've got a commitment to legacy plan. Okay? It's a great discussion either way. If they say no, which is what most people say, you say, can I show you a way that we might be able to do that if you're interested? Again, most people would be polite enough to say, sure. You don't have them yet, but sure. Let's talk about the concept of social capital. Okay? Concept of social capital basically says each of us have been blessed financially have an obligation to help the rest of society with some of those dollars. Pause. Whether or not you believe that's to be the case or not, doesn't matter. That's how the tax code's written. Which basically says that when you pass away, the IRS comes in, pulls off about a third of your assets, sends that up to Washington, D.C. It's doled out for social programs based on what they think is worthy. Pause. Or you can do it. You can direct your social capital to the charities and organizations that are meaningful to you and your family. So you can be a good taxpayer, or you can be a philanthropist, one or the other. But you can't direct that social capital to your kids. So if you've got $1 million in an IRA, the kids don't get $1 million. They get about $650,000. The missing part is your social capital. But there's a better way. Okay? And that's the legacy plan. So if we were to redirect your IRAs over to the Ted Cheney Foundation, or the Brantley Giving Fund, or whatever, I'm going to use your name specifically, and it will catch their attention. So if I direct those IRA dollars over to the Ted Cheney Fund, Ted Cheney Foundation, there's no taxes on that. Your foundation gets 100% of that IRA. So if there's $1 million in the IRA, it gets $1 million. We put it over there. The rest of the money goes to the heirs. Okay? Now, the concept here is, which I skipped after social capital, but remember there are two types of people financially. Those are going to outlive their money, and those their money is going to outlive them. There's also two types of money. Taxable money and non-taxable money. Taxable money is your IRAs, 401ks, and everything above the unified credit amount. Tax-free money is everything else. And there are two recipients to that. There are those that pay taxes, like your natural heirs, and non-taxpayers, like a charity. And what we see a lot of times is, you haven't done it, some people will mention it in their will. And I'll leave $10,000 to the First Methodist Church. Fine. Your taxable dollars have a beneficiary designation on them, okay, going to the taxpayers. Everything else is governed by the will. If the will says I want $10,000 to go to this charity, which doesn't pay taxes. Basically, what we've done is we've given taxable money to people that have to pay taxes, we've given tax-free money to people that don't.